I'm Ash Parker from Hancock County Libraries, and we are excited to be presenting a Genealogy Basics workshop today. We are going to have time after the presentation for question and answer, but feel free to use the chat as well. I am pleased to welcome Ms. DeeDee Baldwin. DeeDee is a history research librarian at Mississippi State University and regularly teaches genealogy workshops. She is the past president of the Society of Mississippi Archivists and a member of the Mississippi Historical Society. In 2021, she was selected for the Reference and User Services Association's History Section's Genealogy History Achievement Award. And we're really excited to have you come and talk to us today. Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Ash. Thanks for inviting me to do this. I love teaching these workshops. And if you have a question at any time, feel free to put it in the chat. I do keep the chat window open and I keep my eyes on it while I'm talking. So sometimes it's easier to answer questions. You know, if the question is about something that we're on the screen talking about right then, it's a lot easier to answer it there. So if it's something, you know, in the moment, you know, put a question in the chat and I'll answer it as we go. So what I'm going to be showing you today is we're going to start off with Ancestry.com, which you're probably already familiar with in some form, whether it's commercials or you've used it before. I'm going to show you how to create a free account without having to enter your credit card information, because some people don't want to do that. And then I'll show you sort of the basics of starting your family tree on there. And then we'll look at some of the most common types of records that you'll be searching, especially when you get started. Then I'm going to show you some other sites. We're going to look at Familysearch.org, which is another big site you might have heard of if you've done some genealogy before. So we're going to look at Familysearch and how to use their family tree maker and how to search records on that site. And then I'm going to show you a few other really helpful sites. Some are free and some require subscriptions, but they do have free trials. So, you know, things that you can look at as you begin work on your family tree. So again, if you have a question at any time, stick it in the chat and I'll get to it when I see it. And we'll go ahead and get started. So right now, I'm just going to go to Ancestry.com. And like I said, we're going to look at how to create a free account without entering your credit card information, because if you click one of these buttons like start building a tree or free trial, it's going to ask you to enter your credit card information. And if you're fine doing that, you know, go ahead and do that. Or you might have already created an Ancestry account in the past if you've done some genealogy. If you're like me and you forget to cancel free trials and then you get an email a week later that says, hey, we charged your credit card. That happens to me all the time because I forget to cancel free trials. And some people just don't want to put their credit card information on the internet at all. So for whatever reason, here's how you can create a free account and bypass that credit card stuff. So you're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. And there's this link here that says Support Center. So if you click on Support Center at the bottom, and in the search box here, I'm just going to do a search for free account. And it's going to be one of the first 2 or 3 results. So oh, now it's moved to number 1. So we're going to click on create a free Ancestry account. And then right here by the number 1, there's a link that says click here. So we're going to do that. And this is where you can create an account without entering your credit card information. So just enter that little bit of information there and click continue, and you will have your account if you don't already have one. If you do already have an Ancestry account, you can go ahead and sign into it if you want. Does anybody need me to show that again? Just say something in chat. I'll be glad to show it again. It's kind of a roundabout method going through a few links, but it is nice for people who don't want to mess with a free trial. Okay, so I'm going to give a minute in case anyone's filling this out. And while y'all are doing that, I'm going to sign in to my little demo account. If you are filling out that form for an account, or if you've already logged into an account you already had, you're probably looking at a page that looks pretty much like this. Is anybody filling out that form, and does anybody need another minute before we keep going? Okay, so here's the page we're on, and if you want to start building your tree, your first instinct is probably just going to be to click this button here where it says build a family tree. If you click right there, it's going to give you another page where they want your credit card information, so you can skip that. You can come up to the top where it says trees up in this top menu, and we're going to click on trees, and then we're going to say start a new tree. And then you're just going to start with yourself. So I'm going to enter my name. And this has changed slightly since I last used it. They used to have everything on one little pop-up window, and now they have a next button. This is all new. Okay, so when you enter a date on Ancestry, they do have a standard form. So if I start typing my birthday like this, oh, this has changed. They use, when you type a date here, they used to automatically change it to the standard format, but now they're asking you to enter it in this way, it looks like. This is very weird. Sorry, y'all, they have changed this and it's doing weird stuff. Maybe that'll take it that way. Okay, I don't know why the date field is doing this now. I don't like this at all. But this is their standard date format. It's the date and then the 3-month abbreviation and then a year. It used to be, before whenever this started, that if you typed a date, it would automatically give you a little drop-down box where you could select the standard format. I do always tell people not to do date. I'm going to do a little spaces out so I can show you. I do tell people not to do dates like this, for example. And the reason for that is because, well, let me do a better date than this one. Let me do it this way. The reason for that is because in some countries, like especially in England and Australia, they do dates the opposite of how we do them. So if they look, like when we look at this, we see March 2nd, 1921, but a person in England would see this as the 3rd of February, 1921. So when people do dates like this on genealogy sites, you're never really sure which one they mean. So it's very ambiguous. So don't do dates like this. So you don't have to use Ancestry standard format, but I do recommend that you do, just because it makes your tree look better. It just makes it look neater and kind of, more like you know what you're doing. So we're going to enter the date and then place of, I hope this hasn't changed too. When you start typing, yeah, okay, this is the same. When you start typing the town where you were born, it'll give you a little drop-down box where you can select the standard format. Sometimes you might have to type more than the town if it's a common name, like, I don't know, what's a common town name? Riverside, I guess. If you start typing Riverside, you might have a whole bunch of things to choose from. You might also go into the county, so it'll narrow it down. But Ancestry standard place format, as you can see here, is town, and then county or parish, and then state, and then USA, or whatever the country is. This is another one of those things. Sometimes people don't follow the standard format, and you don't have to. It just makes your tree look better if you do. So go ahead and enter your place of birth and then click done, and you are there. This is new too. It didn't used to do this. I hate when they change how sites work, especially when I have to do workshops. It's kind of an interesting surprise when you go in and see it. Okay. So the next thing you're going to need to do is add at least one parent. So I'm going to add my dad. You can add whichever parent you want to. This new date format thing that they're doing is really weird. I don't know why it's sticking those dashes in there. I don't like this at all, Ancestry. I hope they fix this. Okay, so once you've added yourself and at least one parent, you officially have a tree. And now that we officially have a tree, I'm going to leave this page here, this sort of gray page here. This is what they give you when you first start creating a tree, but it's not how the tree looks when you normally look at it every other time you go to the site. So I'm just going to go up to the address bar, and I'm just going to go to regular ancestry.com again. And you can see now that I've created my tree, it appears right here. And to edit it, I'm going to go up to trees, and you can click on your tree. If you want to do other things like settings, you can use this option here that says create and manage trees. So I'm going to show you a couple of common things that you might want to do on your tree. So here's your list, and you can make as many trees as you want. I have a ton because I would do family trees for some of my friends and stuff whenever I got bored. I would say, hey, send me your information if you want to let me do a family tree for you. I'm bored. I'm a weird person. So anyway, you can click on tree settings. And right here, you can change the name of your tree. Ancestry is going to name it automatically, whatever your last name is, but you can change that to whatever you want. Another thing you can do from this page is you can click on this tab here that says privacy settings. And the default setting is public. And I do recommend that you keep your tree public. The reason for that is because other people can find your tree and they can get help from you. And also you might get help from them because if they see that you're the same family, they might send you information that you don't already have. If you're worried about privacy, that's not really a concern because Ancestry, even if your tree is public, it hides information about people who are still living. So it's not going to show any kind of, birthdays and stuff for people who are living. So you don't need to worry about that. But, even with those concerns out of the way, if you do decide you want to keep your tree private, you do have that option. Another tab up here is where it says sharing. So you can click this, or after you click sharing, you can click this orange button that says invite people, and you can invite them by email or username, or you can send them a link. And so you could enter somebody's email here, and this box where it says role, you can choose whether you want to allow this person just to view the tree and not change anything on it, just to be able to look at it. That's what guest means. Contributor means that they can add stuff, but they can't change any settings. They can't do any big changes. And then editor means that they can look at your tree, they can add stuff to it, they can change things that you've added. So, if you're working with somebody else in your family and you want to let them come into the tree and also add their information, you can do that this way. All right, so that's what you can do with all your tree settings. Another thing you can do under the tree info tab is if you have your information on another website, or if you want to put your information on another website, you can export your tree as a Jedcom file. So if you decide to put your tree on, let's say myheritage.com, or maybe Family Tree Maker can make Jedcom files. If you already have your tree in a computer program, you can do that here. So if you want to export your tree, you can do that. All right, so let's go to our tree. I'm going to come back up here to the top where it says trees, and I'm going to click on Baldwin Family Tree. And this is the standard family tree view that you're going to see when you come to Ancestry. So this is the ancestor view. It means it starts with you or whatever person you've chosen to be here in the kind of home spot, and then it branches out and shows their ancestry. Another view that you can use is, see this little button here on the left? It's the second one down. This is called the family view. And it's kind of hard to see what this does with only 2 people in the tree. But this is the view you would want to use if you want to see all the descendants of a person. So if I had a whole bunch of people in my tree, it would show all my great-grandparents up here, and then it would show all their kids and all their kids. So you'd have this huge screen filled with cousins and aunts and uncles. So it's kind of a view that shows all the descendants of a person instead of all the ancestors of one person. Okay, so I'm going back to the standard tree view, and you can click on someone's name. And when you do that, it gives you the option to do a quick edit. You can change some settings for that person, or you can click the profile button, and we'll do that in a second. The other thing you might be seeing is you might see this little leaf here on some of the names. If you've seen an Ancestry.com commercials, that means you have a hint for this person. If you're not seeing a leaf, that's okay. It doesn't mean that there are no records. It just means Ancestry hasn't found any yet automatically with their computers. But you can click that leaf, and then you can click however many hints it says you have, and then you can view your hints for that person. So I'm going to click profile and go to my dad's page, and it automatically generates a timeline. So if I added my mom and some more of my siblings, they would automatically be added to my dad's timeline here. It's got your sources here, and you're going to see in a second how those show up when we attach some sources. So here I can add my mom, or I can add my grandfather. One common question I get a lot is how to add multiple people. We have a question in chat that asks, with a free account, can you see hints? Yes, you can. This little demo account that I'm using for the workshop is a free account. And so, yes, you can see hints on a free account. You can't see all the records that it gives you hints for. That's the way that they tempt you to subscribe or at least do the free trial, because you're like, oh, I want to see these records. So you can see the hints and what records the hints are for, but you can't see all the records. We'll look at that in a second. So one common question I get a lot is how to add multiple people. So for example, if in the case of step parents, or if somebody was adopted, or if they had foster parents or whatever else, you can come up here where it says edit in the upper right corner. Oh, and they've changed this too. Oh no, they haven't. I have my little video window that I had to drag out of the way. So we're going to go to edit, and then we're going to go to edit relationships. And let me add my grandfather as an example. Yeah, deceased. I don't remember when he was born. And I don't know why they did this. They changed his name that I put in there. But anyway, once you have a father appearing here, you can use this little drop-down box to change it from biological. You can change it to adopted, step, foster. They have a bunch of options. And so you can have more than one parent listed in each category, depending on what that relationship was. Same thing with spouses. You can add multiple spouses if the person got remarried for whatever reason, death, divorce, whatever. So that's how you do that. And let me go to this real quick and fix it. I don't know why they didn't use the name that I entered. All right, so now let's look at hints. When I have hints for a person, I have this tab here that appears under their name. So I'm going to click on hints. And you're going to get different kinds of hints. You're going to get ancestry member trees. You're going to see, you might see hints for photos if someone else has uploaded photos for that person. So let's start off with ancestry member trees. This, if you click on review, it's going to ask for your credit card information. And that's because you do have to have a subscription to be able to view member trees. So you won't be able to use that with a free account. But if you're using Ancestry in a library, or if you do have a subscription, or you're using the free trial, you need to be very, very careful with Ancestry member trees. They are inaccurate so often, it's crazy. Please don't take people's word for it. If you see something here, please don't take their word for it. It's just a bad idea. I see inaccurate information here, maybe even half the time. It's that bad. So just be careful with Ancestry member trees if you do get a subscription, or if you do search member trees in a library. So for now, I'm just going to click ignore on this, and I'm going to click ignore on these. You can't use photos if you don't have a subscription. So I'm going to click those. Now, one type of record you can use without a paid account are the records that they pull in from Find a Grave. And I will talk about Find a Grave more later. We're going to go to Find a Grave and look at some of the stuff you can do there. But these two records are both pulled from findagrave.com, which is a free site. And so Ancestry pulls those records in for free. So I'm going to say review on this one. And Ancestry is going to give me a little side window. This is something they just changed in the last year or so. I don't like it, but this is how they do it now. So it's going to ask you if you're sure this is the same person. And I'm going to say, yes, I would like to save this information to my tree. And then you're going to get this kind of little double view here. On the left side of this little table, this is what the record says from findagrave.com. And on the right side, this is what you already have in your tree. So let's say I didn't have these dates in my tree yet. I could click this checkbox and it's going to change whatever's in my tree to what's in the record. So it's kind of a quick way to add information that you might not already have. If you don't need the information, you can just uncheck it. And it says there's a parent showing. And they used to have it where you could add the parent here, but apparently it's not doing that. Some of these changes they make, I don't understand. They used to have it where you could add the parent as well if it was attached to that record. So I'm going to save it to my tree. And now that's attached to my tree. You can only attach records to your tree if you have a subscription, you can attach any records to your tree. If you have a free account, you can only attach records that are accessible by a free account. So some of these others I won't be able to use, and you can tell the ones that you can't use because they don't have the information in them. Like you can see up here on Find a Grave, it's showing me all the information because this is the type of record that I can use because it's free. But in this one, it doesn't give you all the information. It says like year, location, whatever. So it doesn't give you all the information. That means it's a record you need a subscription to view. All right, so to go back to my dad's main page with his timeline and all that stuff, you're going to come under their name and under this tab here. Right now we're on the Hints tab. We're going to go to Facts. That's how you get back to their main page. And by the way, if you want to add pictures to somebody's page, you can click on Gallery and then just click Upload Media, and then you just drag the photos in. It's very easy to do. So back on the Facts page, since I attached a source, it now appears under Sources. And this is why it's really handy to have an Ancestry subscription if you plan to get serious about genealogy, because you can attach all of your sources, not just the ones that are free. And it's so important to keep track of your sources when you're doing genealogy. Some people don't. And so later someone says, hey, how did you find this birth date for so-and-so? And you have no idea where you got that information. It might be right, it might be wrong. You don't know where you got it. So it's really important to keep track of your sources. And for sources that are attached, at any time, you can come here and click on View, and it shows you what information exactly is in this particular record. So it shows you what information about someone's life is documented in this particular record. And you can go back and view it at any time. So that's how you navigate a person's family tree page. And at any time you can come up to the top. And if you want to go back to the family tree, you can click right here where it says so-and-so family tree and view tree. And it shows you your tree. So you can keep adding people and going as far back forward as you want. Okay, so we have a question in chat. Do you know if existing free accounts in Ancestry can be accessed in Ancestry Library Edition? And that's a good question because I'm about to show y'all that. So first, let's clarify something. In order to make a family tree, you have to have your own Ancestry account. Ancestry Library Edition is for searching records. So you can search records on Ancestry Library Edition, and then whatever information you find there, you can come back to your Ancestry account and add that information. Okay, so let me show you Ancestry Library Edition, and y'all do have access to that through the Hancock County Library. If you go to the library, I think what I saw on their website is that there's a shortcut on their computer screens or something where you can go and use that. I'm going to go to MSU Library Edition. They're the same thing. This is just the one that I have access to, so that's why it's the one I'm going to. But they look exactly the same. So just give me a second while I go here. All right. So here is what Ancestry Library Edition looks like. And we're about to move on to searching records. So we're going to kind of switch back and forth between two tabs here so I can show you that these look pretty much the same. All right. So I'm going back to regular Ancestry here. And before we go on to searching records, does anyone have any questions about how to add people to a tree, how to use hints, how to change information, anything related to making a family tree? Does anybody have a question related to that? If you do, just pop it in the chat. Okay, so to search records, up at the top here, we're going to click search. And if you click search, you're going to get this kind of quick little pop-up menu. And I don't find this very helpful, but if you click search twice, it takes you to this search page, which is really nice because it organizes everything into categories. It gives you more options. All right, so here's what Ancestry's search page looks like. Now I'm going to click over to the tab for Ancestry Library Edition, and I'm going to click search at the top here. So here is Ancestry Library Edition search page, and here's Ancestry search page. You can see they're pretty much exactly alike. I have a few more options here because it's showing me some of the things that I last looked at when I was on this demo account. But when you start with Explore by Collection, and it has birth, marriage, and death, census and voter list, immigration and travel, it has this location map. If you switch over to Ancestry Library Edition, it's all the same. So that's really handy if you're used to working with one or the other. All right, so I'm going to keep on working with Ancestry Library Edition here, but just remember that whatever I show you here also works on regular Ancestry. All right, so one of the first types of records that you're probably going to get a ton of hints about, you might have already gotten some hints for it if you entered some people in your tree, is the Social Security Death Index. So this is one of the most common record types, especially for recent people. They have records for almost every person who died in the United States between probably around the 1960s is where it really starts having just about everybody. You have some outliers that died in the 40s or 50s sometimes, but for the most part, it's kind of from the 60s onward. And they usually have it until about 2014 is where the cutoff is. And I think they're constantly expanding that every year, so it gets more and more recent. And this is a handy way to find exact birth and death dates for people in your family that you might not know that information about. So for example, your great uncle, you might not know his birthday or what day he died. You can use the Social Security Death Index to find that information. Also, if you got a Social Security Death Index hint for somebody in your tree, but you have a free account so you can't look at it, you can come over to Ancestry Library Edition and search that record set. So the way to get to the Social Security Death Index is you're going to look under where it says Explore by Collection under birth, marriage, and death. And by the way, these are what we call vital records. So if you see a genealogy website referring to vital records, this is what they're talking about, birth, marriage, and death. So I'm going to click on that. And the very first collection it lists under featured data collections is the Social Security Death Index. So we'll click that, and let's just use a really common name to see what it looks like. Actually, let me do my dad. Use that for an example. Oh no, he died too late for that. Let's just do John Smith. Good old John Smith. Now, if you're entering a really common name like this and you don't know any birth or death dates, like a year even, you're going to get a ton of results and you're not going to know which one is right. So enter as much as you know to get results. But one important thing to remember on Ancestry, on all of these forms, is that if you put too much information, you won't get any results. So just enter what you think you need to find your particular person. Now, let's say that John Smith is your grandfather and you don't know when he was born, but you think he was born in the 20s. So you could put 1925 for the year. And when you enter a year, you can see that I got this little pop-up here. And if you click that, it gives you the option to set a date range to search. So if you don't know the exact year, you can give it a range. So I could do plus or minus 5 years, and that way it's going to search for every John Smith who was born between 1920 and 1930. If you really have no idea, you could do plus or minus 10 years, and then it would search 1915 to 1935. So I'm going to do plus or minus 5. And let's say I think my grandfather, John Smith, died in 1990. But I'm not sure, so I'm going to give it a plus or minus 5 years. And let's see what we get for this. So again, very common name. Lots of John Smiths died between who was born in the 1920s and died around 1990. There's quite a few of them. In fact, there's 4,548 of them. Very common name. So let's just say that the one that is our ancestor is this guy, just because I like the name of the town, Mattapony. That's funny. So I'm going to say this guy. And if you click on this record, it gives you this information. If you're using Ancestry Library Edition, you can scroll down and you can send this document to yourself. You can enter your email address and it'll send this document to you, or you can print it. But if you want to save it on your computer, you can send it to yourself. So even if you're using Ancestry Library at home, or I'm sorry, you're using Ancestry Library at the library, but you want to save the documents you're finding, you can do that and email them to yourself. So if I had this person in my tree, I could write down this information and I could go back to my tree and add that information into my tree. Again, I won't be able to attach the record because I would have to have a subscription to do that, but at least I can have the information and I can save the document and keep it some other place, like in a binder or whatever you use to keep track of your stuff. Another cool thing when you're looking at records that Ancestry does is, just like with hints on the family tree, it'll show you records that might be the same person. So it's matching up these birth and death dates, and it's saying, hey, this also might be this person. So let's click on Social Security Applications and Claims Index, because this is a record set I want to show you. It has some cool information. And John S. Smith, this might be the same guy. So let's see, we'll check the birth and death dates to make sure they're the same guy. April 17th to June 16th. Yeah, so this is the same guy. So his middle name is Speaker, which is interesting. And the Social Security Applications and Claims Index is really cool because it gives you a birthplace, and often it'll go all the way down to the town level. Sometimes it just has a state, but sometimes it gives you the actual town. They do give you middle names. And the best thing about this record set is that they give you the mother's name and her maiden name. So sometimes women's maiden names are really hard to find. And so this is, if you can find somebody on the Social Security Applications and Claims Index, then it's a quick way to find their parents' names. So this person, John Speaker Smith, his parents were John S. Smith and Louise Kemp. So you've already found this guy's parents. So these suggested records can save you a whole bunch of time. Just be aware that they don't always match, because these are suggested by a computer, obviously. And so you do want to check other things that like birth and death date, other information, and make sure that they're the same person. So just make sure you check. But these suggested records can be extremely helpful and save you a ton of time, especially on the census. So let's just, for an example, look at what it says for the 1930 census. Let's see if it's showing a John Smith in Virginia with parents named John and Louise. Just out of curiosity, let's see if this is the same guy. So it's the same county, King William. The parents are named John and Louise, and the son was born around 1925. So this is him. This is him with his family, and it looks like he also has a sister named Phyllis. So that's the same guy. Suggested records are great. All right, so that's the Social Security Death Index and also how to use suggested records. Let's talk about the census. The census is kind of the big thing that you're going to have to do in order to do genealogy. So to go back to the search page, I'm going to come back up to the top here and I'm going to click search twice. Because remember, clicking it twice brings you to this nice page. And let's click on US Federal Census Collection. So when you click on the US Federal Census Collection, it's going to give you this form. And some people just start filling out this form. I don't recommend searching the entire census because if you use this form here, it searches every census from 1790 to 1940, which is the most recent census we have. The 1950 census, I think, might be released next year. I'm not entirely sure about that, but it comes out really soon, which is pretty exciting. Genealogy nerds always get really excited when a new census comes out. But currently it's 1790 to 1940. And you don't want to do a search that big, especially if you're searching for someone with a common name. So you really don't want to use this form unless you're just having a ton of trouble and you're trying to throw everything at the wall to see what sticks. When you're searching the census, you want to be very targeted. So let's scroll down below that form, and right here you can choose which census you want to search. I recommend starting with the first census that that person would be on. So if we're looking for someone who was born in 1875, then the first census we're going to find them on is 1880. So I would recommend starting with 1880 for that person and then moving on to 1900. And the reason I skipped 1890 is because we don't have the 1890 census, except for like a few people, because almost the entire thing was burned. So we have this big 20-year gap between 1880 and 1900, and it's terrible because so many people get lost in that gap, and it's super frustrating. So start with the first one they would appear on and work your way forward. If you prefer, you could also start with the most recent and work your way back, whichever way you prefer. I prefer starting earliest and moving forward. Some people prefer the most recent and moving back. That's totally up to you. All right, so let's talk about some of the most important census years on here. So the first really important thing to be aware of is the 1850 census. This is kind of a magical census year because this is the first year that everyone in a household was listed by name. Before 1850, they would just go to the households and they would just write down the name of the head of the household, who was usually a man. They would put his name, and then everybody else who lived in that household was just a tick mark. So they would have like males aged 5 to 10, 2 tick marks, females aged 15 to 20 or whatever, 2 tick marks. There's no names except for that head of the household. So if you have someone who was married before 1850, you're not going to find them listed with their parents on the census unless their parents are elderly and living with them later. But as far as viewing them as a child listed under their parents, you're not going to find them generally. So that's really rough, especially for women. If it's so easy to lose women in the family tree with those maiden names getting lost. And while I'm on the maiden name thing, I should have mentioned this when we were looking at the tree, but I'm going to say it now, better late than never. When you're entering women into your family tree, make sure you use their maiden names. Some people list them by their married names. That's incorrect. Some people put their maiden name and their married name. That's also incorrect. Just list them by their maiden name. Their married names are kind of understood based on whoever their husband or husbands are. So The 1850 census, first one where you get every member of a household listed. You'll have the father, the mother, and the kids, and anyone else living in that household listed by name. The next probably big census is 1870, especially or mainly if you're looking for African American ancestors. And this is because 1870 is the first census taken after emancipation. Before emancipation, all anyone who was enslaved was not listed on the census. Their quote, quote, masters were listed, and that's what these slave schedules are. If you see these things here, 1850 and 1860 slave schedules, some people think that those are names of enslaved people. They are not, unfortunately. They list the name of the person who was enslaving them, and then everyone that he had on his plantation was just listed as a tick mark. So they'll say like the gender and the age, but they won't say their names. So 1870, if you have African American ancestors, 1870 is probably the first census you're going to find them on. There are exceptions. If they were free people of color before the Civil War, they will be on the census. So if they were free, they're going to be on the census before 1870. But for the vast majority, you're not going to be able to find them by name until 1870. Another significant year is 1900, mainly because, let me explain this. Before 1900 and on the censuses after as well, the census taker would go to a house and he would say, about how old are you? They wouldn't ask what year were you born, they would say, how old are you? And the reason this matters is that depending on when the census taker came by, so let's say the census taker came by in June and asked somebody how old they were, and the person was going to turn, their birthday is in like maybe October, then their birth year is going to be off. So birth years on the census in general are very, let's just say you can't trust those birth years. In most cases, they're probably only going to be off like a year or two, because most people, they knew how old they were and they were honest about it. And so it might only be off like a year, depending on when the census taker came by. Some people didn't know how old they were, especially in rural places like Mississippi, places where literacy wasn't high. People who had been enslaved often had no idea how old they were because their birthdays weren't recorded anywhere. So some people didn't know. Some people straight up lied. And it's a stereotype, but it's especially common with women. You're going to find a lot of women in the census who say that they're younger than they actually were. I find so many women in my family tree and one or two men who say that they are way younger than they were. So don't be thrown off if that birth year is way off. It could just be a case where the person didn't know. It could be a case where the person who talked to the census taker was just kind of estimating. Like they might have just said, oh, my dad is about 40, my mother is about 40, but maybe the mother was 43. They're just estimating. So there's all kinds of reasons for those dates to be off. What makes the 1900 census different is that instead of saying how old are you, they would say what month and year were you born. So the 1900 census is the only one that shows an exact month and year when the person was born. Again, it's not always accurate because sometimes people didn't know or they lied, but in some cases, it's the only record you might have of any kind of estimate of when that person was born. So, it can be really helpful instead of just having that year, that estimated birth year. And like we said before, the 1940 census is the most recent one we currently have, soon to change. I'm looking forward to 1950 because that's going to be the first census my dad appeared on. He was born in 1948, and so I'm really excited to see him as a 2-year-old on the 1950 census. For some reason, I just get a kick out of seeing my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents as little kids on the census. There's just something, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's kind of a sentimental thing, I guess, seeing them as kids. But the most recent one we have is 1940. Now you're also going to see these icons here. See where it says free by 1940 and 1880 and the slave schedules. That means these are records that you can look at without a subscription. So if you're on your own Ancestry account and it's a free account, these are records that, just like the Find a Grave records, you can look at the 1940 census and the 1880 census and some of these other things on your free account. And you can also attach those records to people in your tree on a free account. Another thing I want to say real quick about attaching records, I do get this question commonly. If you do a free trial and you just get on there and find as many records as you possibly can, attach as many hints as you possibly can, sometimes I get the question, if you let that free trial expire, or if at any time you end your subscription to Ancestry, do those things get unattached from your tree? Do you lose all that work? And the answer is no, you don't. So if you do Ancestry's free trial, which is, I can't remember if it's a week or 2 weeks, but if you do their free trial and you get on there and you just add as much as you possibly can, that stuff will stay attached to your tree, even if you cancel the free trial. So just something worth thinking about. Get on there and add as much as you can and then cancel that free trial if that's what you want to do. Okay, so let's search a census. I'm going to do 1880. And let's say we're just looking for someone named Robert Jones. And I think he was born around 1875. And I'm going to put a 5-year range on that. And let's just say I think he lived in Mississippi. Actually, let me say I think he lived in Hancock County, Mississippi. So if you start typing a place name, it's going to give you suggestions. I'm going to choose Hancock County, Mississippi. And if you choose a county, just like with the date, you're going to get this little thing, this little pop-up thing where you can set a range. And when it's a location, you can tell it to search exactly this county. You can tell it to do this county and any adjacent counties. So if the family might have moved around a lot, or if you don't know exactly where they lived, but you think they lived in that area, you might choose that. You can tell it to search the whole state. If you think they moved around a lot, you can say state and adjacent states. And if you just have absolutely no clue, you can tell it to search the whole country. So let's say we think this guy probably lived in Hancock County, but maybe he lives somewhere nearby. So I'm going to say to search the county and adjacent counties. And let's just see what we get with this search. It's a pretty common name, so we'll probably get somebody. Oh, wow. Okay. I thought we would get somebody for that. Let's search the whole state. There we go. All right. So I'm looking at everybody who had the name Robert Jones, and it's also going to automatically search for names like Bob Jones. It automatically searches for like common nicknames and alternate spellings. You can tell it not to do that. So you can tell it on this little sliding scale that you only want, no, I want exactly Robert or exactly Jones. So you can change this little sliding scale to include or exclude results. So if you have too many, you might want to narrow it down. If you're not getting any, you probably want to make it broader. But let's say this guy in Warren County is who we're looking for. So here's a census record. Here's the information that a transcriber pulled out of the record. And it shows the head of the household, who is almost always his father. The wife, who is almost always the mother. The thing you do have to be careful with, though, is that death in childbirth was common. Death for lots of reasons was very common for men and women back in the day. So it doesn't necessarily mean that's his mother. It could be a second wife. It could be his father's second wife, so it might be his stepmother. But for your purposes starting off, you can just assume that's his mother. But then if you find information later that says, oh no, Benjamin Jones had another wife before Lilla, and that's who Robert's mother was. So just be aware that that's a possibility. And then it shows Ben and Lilla's 4 kids, Thomas, Robert, Matthew, and Alzadi. That's interesting. Okay, so you're always, whenever you have the option on a record to look at the image, whenever there's an image, you always want to look at the image. The image almost always has more information than what is pulled out here. So for example, I don't think the 1880 census, I don't think they pull out their occupation, but it is on the original image. And I'm going to show you another record set later where there's even more information that doesn't get pulled out here. So let's click on this image. The handwriting can be really hard to read, especially if the page is very faded. This one isn't too bad, but Ancestry does helpfully highlight names for you to help you figure out what you're looking at. So here's Benjamin Jones. And yeah, see, there's a column for occupation that wasn't transcribed. So that's something you're only going to see if you look at the actual image. So Benjamin Jones was a farmer. This guy is a machinist. We have a carpenter. We have a cook. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I think that says seafarer. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That says laborer. Handwriting's really bad. It's laborer. At first, I thought it was a really interesting one. Sometimes you'll see some funny occupations on these. Not in this case, really. Farmer, laborer, pretty common. All right, so here's their family. Here's the occupation that you're only going to see if you look at the actual image. The other reason you really want to look at the original image for the census is because it can be really helpful to look at the other people listed on the page. Especially in rural areas, families lived close together. And so you can see there's other Jones on this page. There's someone named Baptist Jones, who is 38. And since Benjamin is 39, I would be willing to bet that Baptist and Benjamin are brothers. That's a total guess, but it's probably a safe guess. Another thing you can see in Benjamin Jones's household is he has someone living with him named Jane Howard, and it says that's his mother. So I don't know if she remarried and had a different last name. Another thing it could mean is mother-in-law. Sometimes they would write out mother-in-law, but sometimes the census taker was lazy and they would just put mother. So Jane Howard might be Leela or Lila's mother. Most likely she's Benjamin's, but she could be either one. Just remember that they didn't always write out in-law because they got lazy. Here's more Jones, Henry Jones, 35. Again, he is almost certainly the brother of Benjamin and Robert. They're like the same age. Families lived close together. Here's an Albert, age 40. These are probably all brothers, or at the very least cousins. So it can be very helpful to look at the other people on the page, just because you can find other family members that way. And it can also be interesting to see some of their neighbors' names and occupations. It can give you kind of an idea of what kind of community, what kind of area they were living in. This was obviously a farming community, very rural, because it's a lot of laborers and farmers. So it can give you an idea of where they were living as well. But definitely always look at the original image. All right, so that is the census. Just a few little pointers I want to give you when you search the census. If you are looking for someone with a really common name, like if you were looking for someone named Robert Jones, sometimes you have to be really creative with how you look for people. If you're not getting any results, sometimes you might want to try looking for other people in the family that had less common names. So let's just say that you knew Robert had a sister named Sophronia. That was a really common name in the 1800s, believe it or not. So you could try looking for her, or maybe her name was Victoria or Sophia. Sometimes, you know, it can help to look for somebody else in the family that maybe would only have one or two results instead of all of these guys, and you don't know which one it was. And that also brings me to the point that you do want to take the time to add extended family. A lot of people, when they first start genealogy, including me, you you just get started and you just want to see how far back you can go. So you're just adding parents, grandparents, only direct relatives. You do want to take the time to add those aunts and uncles and cousins. Knowing their names can help you find people. So like the example I just gave with searching for other people with less common names, they can help you verify that you're looking at the right person. So if you do have a lot of results, and if you hover over this view record button, it shows you kind of a quick preview of what's there. So let's say I did that and I look at some of these names and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember him talking about, I know Aunt Anna and Uncle Charles and Aunt Martha and whoever. So knowing those other names can help you verify that you're looking at the right person. Another reason it's really helpful to add all those brothers and sisters and children and aunts and uncles is because sometimes you will find other family members living with them. So if you're having trouble finding parents, like let's say it's a case where they got married before 1850 and they're not together on that census, you might find their parents living with one of their siblings. It was very common for parents and grandparents to live with younger people when they got older. So if you know Robert had a brother named Charles, maybe you'll find Charles on the census and Charles is living with their parents. So if you couldn't find Robert's parents, you can find them by knowing that the parents are living with Charles, right? So take the time to add those people. They help you. And they also help other people find your tree. If there are people now who are descended from Robert's brother Charles, maybe they will find your tree and be able to give you information that you didn't have. So take the time to add those people. Don't just get excited and just see how far back you can go and only add direct ancestors. It is time well spent. It'll help you break through brick walls in a lot of situations. All right, so that's the census. One other record that I want to highlight that you're probably going to get a whole lot in hints, and plus it's just a really cool record. We're going to click on, and to get back here, I did the thing at the top where you double click on search, and I'm going to go to military. And the very first record set listed under featured data collections is World War I draft registration cards. These come up all the time in hints because pretty much every young man who was born roughly in the 1880s to the late 1890s, almost every young man who was born in that date range has a World War I draft card. There are also World War II draft cards, but these don't cover as many people as the World War I draft did. So let's click on that. And I'm just going to do a common name. I just want to show y'all what these look like and what kind of information they have. So let's say I'm just going to do a John Smith. Okay, so the really cool thing about World War I draft cards is, as you can see in these results, they a lot of times give you the man's middle name. So we have John Henderson Smith, John William Smith, John Alexander, John Charles, John Archie. And in some cases, this might be the only source you have for what a man's middle name was, because middle names weren't commonly used on many documents. And so this can be a great source for learning what a man's middle name was. The other thing that's cool about them is they do have exact birth dates. They're not always correct. If you take anything from this workshop, take the fact that records had mistakes in them, just like they do now, maybe even more than they do now. Records had mistakes in them, but they do have an exact birth date. This guy was born on my birthday, September 19th. And then it also gives you where they were living, and it says where they were born in some cases. So let's look at, I'm going to pick this guy just because he was born on my birthday. So this guy's name was John William Smith Cox Sr. And it shows some of the information from the record, but just like with the census, there's information on the card that doesn't get pulled out here. So I'm going to click on the card, and on the left side, this would have been the front of the card. And over here on the right side, this would have been what was on the back of it. Okay, so one of the cool things on the World War I draft cards is that they had their occupation and where they worked. So this guy was a merchant. and he worked at Wallkill in Ulster County, New York. It doesn't say what his employer's name was. He must have been self-employed, especially since he was a merchant. This nearest relative box appears on about half the cards. It doesn't always appear, but when it does, it's either the name of a parent or the person's wife. So, and it doesn't say here which one, if this is his mother or his wife. In very, very rare situations, if his mother was dead and he wasn't married, maybe it would be a sister. It might be a brother or a father, but it's almost always a parent or a wife listed here. These cards are also cool because they have the person's signature, and it might be the only source you have for what this person's signature looked like, and it can be really cool to have that. If it was a person who couldn't read or write, they would just have an X. Whoever was writing down the information for them would write their name, and then they'd have like an X here, and it would say his mark. But in this case, there's no X, so this is the guy's signature. Over here on this side of the card, it has kind of like a very general physical description: brown eyes, brown hair. He was tall, medium build. It'll have any disabilities he had listed here. So sometimes you'll see things, especially in rural farming communities, you'll see things like missing a finger or missing a toe. Sometimes you'll see that the person had bad eyesight or they were deaf. There's all kinds of different things you might see here. So always look at the card. It has more information than what's here. So I just wanted to show you all those World War I draft cards because they come up a lot in hints, and they are a great source of information, and they're just really cool. Okay, so that's Ancestry. I'm going to go back to Ancestry.com, and I'm going to log into my regular account so I can show y'all just a couple of things. Show you my real account. So the first thing I want to show you is that family view on the family tree. I said that it looks a lot different when you have a lot of people. So I'm going to click family view. And this is what it looks like when you have a bunch of people in your tree. So it's showing you all these great grandparents, and it shows like all the descendants. You're going to see all your cousins. So it really expands it a lot. So that's what the family tree looks like when you have a lot of people. The other thing I wanted to show you was sometimes people ask about DNA. I don't talk about DNA in these workshops because I'm not an expert in it, but some people are just curious about what it looks like when you have it done. So I'm just going to show you mine just in case there are people curious about that. These are the results I got. Go away. So you can see my ancestors are pretty much, well, not pretty much, they are all European, kind of boring. England, Ireland, and France, and Scotland, you know, just your general white bread European here. So this is what it looks like when you get those kind of results. And the really cool thing that you can do with DNA is it does show you, they have this thing called DNA matches, and it shows you other people on Ancestry who are really close DNA matches to you. And most of these people I know because I'm already in touch with them, like Paige is my cousin, so I know who she is already. Bill Young was my dad's brother. So there's, you know, but it might show you people you didn't know about, and that you might want to figure out how you're related, and you might be able to find other people in your tree. A lot of these people I know, a lot of people I've never heard of in my life. And it can be really helpful if the person has a public tree linked to their DNA. So then you can look at their tree and see where y'all might match up. So like I said, I'm not going to go real deep into DNA, but I know a lot of people are curious about what you might get with that. And so this is what you can do with it if you do Ancestry DNA. Through lines is another thing that it shows you, like, let me show you. It shows you people that they think you're related to based on your DNA. It's not just because you entered them in the tree. So the further back you go, it might suggest people that you didn't know about. So these are people that aren't in my tree that it's saying, hey, there's a lot of DNA matches to this person. This might be someone you're looking for that you didn't know about. And in this case, yeah, I don't I don't know about these people, and I have a bunch of DNA matches with them. So they're probably my ancestor at some point, and I might want to research them and figure out how we're connected. So that's a really cool thing that you can do with through lines. It shows you ancestors that you might not know about. Here's another one. All right. So that's Ancestry. The next site that I want to show you is Familysearch.org. And we're not going to go as in depth on all of these sites as we do on Ancestry. So Familysearch is a free site. Everything is free. Searching the records, making a family tree, everything's free. The great thing about Familysearch is it offers a lot of the things Ancestry makes you pay for. So on Familysearch, you can search the Social Security Death Index. They have all of the US censuses for free. They have the World War I draft cards. They have World War II draft cards. So they have a bunch of stuff that Ancestry makes you pay for. They don't have as many records as Ancestry has, but they do have some records that Ancestry doesn't have. And especially a few records from Mississippi that I'm going to show y'all in a minute. But first, let's talk about how they do their family tree on Familysearch. So when you when you register for the site, I'm going to click on Family Tree, and then I'm going to click on Tree. And so here's my tree on this site. And you might be wondering, is it worth adding your information on both sites? The information is definitely yes, it is worth it. For one thing, it's not going to take you as much time, and here's why. On Ancestry, everybody on Ancestry makes their own tree. So let's say you have a person born in the 1700s and they have a ton of descendants. Because they have so many descendants, that person is probably going to appear on dozens or even hundreds of Ancestry family trees. All of these individual trees. Familysearch has, their goal is to make one big tree that everybody connects to. It's kind of like a wiki tree. If you think about Wikipedia, where everybody can go in and edit, that's how Familysearch is. So when you start with yourself and your parents and maybe your grandparents, you're probably entering people that aren't already on the site. But the further back you go, the more likely it is that you're just connecting to people that have already been added. And so you don't have to add that information. It's already on the site. If you're worried about people changing any of your information, I mean, it's a possibility, but I've been on this site for over 10 years and I've never had a problem with that. But if you want to, let me click on my dad's to show you something. Just like with Ancestry, you can click on somebody's name and you can see a profile page for them. On Ancestry, it says profile. On Familysearch, it's just this thing here that says person. So you click that. This is my dad's information page. This is what an information page on Familysearch looks like. It shows their parents, any wife and kids that they had. And just like with Ancestry, you can attach sources. So if I click this sources tab here, and like I said, everything on Familysearch is free. So this is a way to attach census records and other things that Ancestry makes you pay for. This is a way to attach sources to a tree for free if you don't want to pay for Ancestry. So you can attach sources just like with Ancestry. They do give you hints. I don't have any for my dad right now, but this is where they would appear if you had any hints. So Familysearch does have hints. They don't work as well as Ancestry's hints do. Their computers don't read things, I guess, as well as Ancestry's do. They have a real problem working with women's married names versus maiden names. So sometimes you have to do a little bit more work on the women. But they do have hints. So it's definitely worth adding people. And what I wanted to show you is if you're worried about people changing your information, there's a little star on every person's page that says follow. It says following here because I'm following my dad's page. But if you click follow, they will send you an email. If anybody comes in and adds or changes something on this page, they'll send you an email and then you can come and check it out to see if it's somebody messing something up or, you know, if it's something you want to undo or fix or whatever. So if you're worried about that, you can follow pages. And like I said, I've been using the site over 10 years and I've never had a problem with anyone changing my information to anything that's wrong, you know, so that's a cool thing. If anyone is willing to let me use one of your ancestors as an example for how to add someone to the tree, will you go into the chat and enter the person's name and their date of birth and place of birth and date of death and place of death sometime in the next couple minutes, and I can use that as an example for how to add someone to the tree. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat for if anybody does that. Please do, if you have someone you don't mind me using as an example. All right, so another thing you can do from a person's information page is you can search records. So if I click Family Search here at the top, it's going to run a search through all of the records on Family Search and tell me if they find any results that might match. These are all things I've already attached to my dad, the ones that apply to him anyway. But if you don't have these records yet, this is a quick way to find them. Okay, keeping an eye on the chat to see if anybody's going to give me an example to use. I hope you do. Let me see if I can find someone who has a hint so I can show you what those look like. I might have to go really far back. Ah, here we go. This is what Family Search's hints look like. It's a little blue box. On Ancestry, it's a green leaf. On Family Search, it's a blue box. So we can view our record hints, and you can go and look at those just like you can on Ancestry. Okay, so I'm just going to make up a person if nobody's going to give an example in the chat. I'll just make something up. Ah, there we go. All right, let's see if we can. So to add an unconnected person, and that's what I'm going to do for this example, I just want to show you what it looks like to add a person to a tree and what it looks like if they're a new person or if there's someone who's already in the family tree. So let's try Leroy Meldrum King. And he was born 11 July 1898. This is the standard format for Family Search dates. They don't abbreviate the month like Ancestry does. They write it out. But if you do abbreviate it, just like Ancestry used to do, they will suggest the proper format and you can just click it. And I'm not sure if this was a Mississippi guy, but let's just see what we get for this. Sometimes if you don't have enough information, they don't match it just because they don't know for sure it's the same person, but the person might actually be in the tree already. So this might be, okay, so this is the guy. So this is what it looks like if you add someone who's already in the tree. So I'm assuming this is the same guy, same birth date, and it's in Pennsylvania. So if this was someone they didn't match to, it would show it up as a new person. So I'm going to click on View Person. And this is what I meant by it won't take you a whole bunch of work to add your tree into Family Search because most of the people are already going to be in here and you can just connect to them. So let's just say this is your grandfather. And so you happen to know his wife's name, so you can add that information that they don't have already. So you can expand this information that they don't have. And this is how you connect to the tree. Sometimes you will find duplicates. If you do find someone, and duplicates are very common on Family Search because sometimes people just add someone even though that person's already in the tree, and it's really annoying. But you can merge duplicates. If you find two people who are the same person, if you look at this ID number right here, you can click on that and copy it. And so you can, if you found somebody who was the same person, you can click merge by ID, and then you can paste their ID here and merge. If that's not something you feel comfortable doing, you do not have to do that. But it is an easy process that you kind of get the hang of if you run into enough duplicates. But just be aware that is an option to merge people. So yeah, that's how you navigate family trees. Now let's look at Family Search's records. Just like with Ancestry, you have a search button at the top. So we're just going to click search, and I'm going to say search records. All right, so they have changed this page. Wow, okay. This used to have like a map on it. As recently as last week, this had a map and you could choose a location, but it's mainly the same. Okay, So let me show you the Mississippi collections that Familysearch has that Ancestry does not. So if you start typing Mississippi here, it's going to suggest the record collections that have Mississippi in them. And if you scroll down to Mississippi State Archives, various records, this is a collection that Ancestry doesn't have. And this is totally different. They've changed their layout. So you can do a search for a name, or you can browse the images. And what's cool about browsing is you can go by county. So let's say you want to see what they have for Hancock County. It's kind of a hodgepodge collection. Each county gave them different stuff to the archives and history. So that's where these came from, is MDAH. So in this case, for Hancock County, we have county tax rolls from the early 1800s, some military grave registrations for various years, state censuses, territorial tax rolls from before Mississippi was a state. So you can browse these, and they can be kind of cool to look at, especially if you can read the handwriting. So you can navigate these images. You can zoom in and out with this little toolbar. And we're going to go to the next page, see what's on here. This is just a folder we're looking at here. Okay, so there's all kinds of cool little stuff in here. So you can zoom in, you can use your mouse's scroll wheel. If you have a mouse, number of town lots, location of town lots, just all kinds of weird, cool things here. Here's a Pierre Hooper. Ooh, I don't know how to say that name. Willis Arnold, Lucian Albert, James Ammons, John L. Armstrong, Stephen Aldrich. So they can be kind of cool to look at, especially the really old stuff. Or you can just search for a name you're looking for. Let's say you know somebody in Hancock County named John Smith. This will show you records that might be this person. And if any of that looks like who you're looking for, it's a very common name, obviously, so you're going to get all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to go back to search at the top. I'm going to click search records. Another Mississippi record set they have that Ancestry might have added this since I last checked. But I think it might be very recent, but Mississippi Enumeration of Educable Children, for a while at least, and maybe still, is only available on Familysearch. And these records, they don't give you a ton of info. They give you a kid's name. They give you a parent's name. They tell you what county they were going to school in, and they give you an estimated age. And those ages are very estimated because it's based on what grade the kid was in. And because so many kids would drop out and go back into school, depending on farming and working at home and stuff like that, sometimes they were in a grade that was way behind what their age would suggest, but they would guess the age of the kid based on what grade they were in. So be aware that birth years are off. But yeah, it tells you the year they were enrolled in school and what county they were in and a parent's name. It's not a lot of information, but it can be a way to track at least where a family was living at any given time. Sometimes it can be a way to find siblings that you might not have known about for whatever reason. So it can be a useful little record set, at least for locating people. They do have a few other very small records that Ancestry doesn't have, but those are the main ones. They also have some marriage records that Ancestry doesn't have, and some of the marriage records have more information than the Ancestry marriages have. So just be aware of that as well. I think it's this county marriages set that has a little bit more information than Ancestry does. This Mississippi marriages, 1800 to 1911, I think that's the one Ancestry has. But this county marriages is the one I think I'm thinking about with more information. So yeah, just be aware of Familysearch. They don't have as many records as Ancestry, but they do have some that Ancestry doesn't have. And you might get hints on Familysearch that Ancestry didn't give you, or vice versa. So it's definitely worth putting your information on both sites and using both sites to search records. I use Familysearch actually more than I use Ancestry. Just there's a lot of different reasons, but I actually like Familysearch better than Ancestry. So it's definitely worth using. All right, so let me pop up another site here. Another site I want to show you is Fold3. So Fold3 is a subscription site, but they do have a free trial, and I think, yeah, it's a week. If you have military people in your family, especially if they fought in the Civil War, you're probably going to want to do this free trial and find all the information you can and then cancel it. I'm a big proponent of taking advantage of free trials. What makes Fold3 cool, especially, is for Civil War records. I don't know if any of you have tried to find Civil War service records in a library, but the way it works is you would have to use a book, first of all, to find what regiment a person would have been in. And then in the case of our library, you would come to our special collections department, and we had this big binder of microfilm lists, and you would go through this binder and you would look up their regiment and find what roll of microfilm that regiment was on. Then you would pop in the microfilm, and then you would scroll through it until you could find the person you were looking for. Fold3 has all of those Civil War records online, and you can just search them. So if you have an ancestor who was in the Civil War, get that Fold3 free trial, download all the images of those service records, and then cancel the free trial. So let me show you just, if you've never seen a Civil War service record, I'll just show you what they look like. So we're going to go to, let's find Mississippi, Civil War service records, Mississippi. And let's just say you want to look at the 1st Cavalry, the 2nd Cavalry. You can, let's say you're looking for someone whose last name is Smith. And it shows you all the names in that regiment with that last name. Let's just say we're looking for John Sims. And those are the pages of his service record. Now, I don't have an active subscription to Fold3 currently, so if I click on these, it's going to ask me for my credit card information. But you can see that even though I'm not signed in or registered, it still lets you search for what's on here. So if you're not sure about doing a free trial, maybe try searching for some of the names you have and see if there's stuff on here you can use beforehand. And then if there is, and say, hey, I want these, I want to see what those 6 pages say. Then you might want to do that free trial and download those images. They have other types of records on Fold3 as well. It does focus on military, but they have other types of records. One record set that I found useful was my dad's ancestors were from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Fold3 has Philadelphia city directories going back to like the 1700s. And so I found a lot of cool information on those. But you can see they have a ton of different stuff that that's on here. Some of them are repeats with other sites, like they have the Social Security Death Index, they have the census. So you'll have those kind of things that a lot of the sites have. But what's really super valuable are the military records. So like I said, if you have military people in your family, especially Civil War, Fold3 is worth checking out. All right, next, a site that you might already know about is findagrave.com. You'll remember when we were looking at Ancestry, the hint from Find a Grave is what we used and attached. But Find a Grave is worth visiting on its own, just to search. Oh, and by the way, Familysearch also pulls in Find a Grave and BillionGraves records, so they both do. So Find a Grave can be really useful if you're looking for family members you might not know about because maybe they weren't on the census. A really good example is finding people who died as infants or young children, maybe between census years. You might never know they existed because they weren't on the census. So to search Familysearch, let's just say you're looking for the last name Smith, and we're going to say it's in Hancock County. And Mississippi, there it is. And I'm going to click search. So you can see everyone with that last name of Smith who's buried in Hancock County. And it shows you what cemetery they're buried in and what town and county. And now just be aware that this isn't an exact list of everyone who's buried in that place. Find a Grave is done by volunteer work. So fortunately, Mississippi has a whole bunch of people who enjoy doing this, including me. People who like to visit cemeteries and take pictures of headstones. So Mississippi's fortunately one of the good states to try to find people on Find a Grave. And I think the reason for that is because Mississippi has such terrible vital records. If you look at the Northeast, they have birth and death records going back to, like, if they're some of the original colonies, they have birth and death records going back to like the 1600s. Mississippi didn't start keeping death records until 1912. So for a lot of people looking for exact dates of birth and death in Mississippi, your only choices really are if they appear on the Social Security Death Index, if they're recent enough for that, or if you can find their headstone. And so I think that's one of the reasons that Find a Grave is such a big deal in a state like Mississippi, is because it kind of makes up for our lack of records. So you can do a search for a last name in a county. You can also narrow it down by city, or you can even search the cemetery. So if I was looking at this Aline Foxall Smith, if you look on the side here, you can search for other people with that last name in the same cemetery, and it lets you search for her married name or her maiden name if you're interested in either family. So you can look in that same cemetery, which, you know, they're probably related if they're in the same cemetery, unless it's just a huge cemetery. You can search in the county, the state, or the entire country. Families, or Find a Grave also lets you connect spouses and parents and children. So it can be an easy way to connect family members. And headstone photos are provided by volunteers. And you can also request photos. So let's say that you're related to, let me find one that doesn't have a photo. Does this guy have a photo? Oh, he has one. I'm trying to find one that doesn't have a photo. Here's one. So let's say you're related to Carl Smith and you would really like to see a photo of his headstone. You can request it. And if you request a photo, they're going to Find a Grave will send an email to all the photo volunteers in that area, in that zip code. And then one of them will have the option of going to the cemetery and tracking down this headstone for you and taking a picture of it. And if they upload a picture, Find a Grave will send you an email that says, yay, someone took a picture of this grave you requested. We have a question, does Find a Grave cover other countries? Yes, but it's not nearly as many as the United States. Like I said, it's run by volunteers, so it just depends on what volunteers in other countries do. There is another site called BillionGraves.com that does better on other countries, and we're going to look at BillionGraves in just a second. So Find a Grave is also cool because you can leave like virtual memorials for people. So you can leave like virtual flowers. Let me show you. I'm going to go to my page real quick. I'm going to click on my dad. And if you scroll down, you can see that people have left little messages in virtual flowers and stuff. A lot of people come by and, oh, I haven't seen that yet. That's sweet. My dad was a potter, and this person added a little picture of a potter. That's cool. So yeah, you can have like these little memorial areas where you can add messages and virtual flowers. And that was the original purpose of Find a Grave. It kind of turned into a place where people search records, but it originally started as a way to have virtual memorials for people on the internet, especially for people who didn't live near where that cemetery might be. So like I mentioned earlier, my dad's ancestors came from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and he also had some in New York State. And I've never been to Philadelphia or New York, but I have pictures of their headstones that people took for me, which is really cool. So actually, I can show you my, go to my grandfather. I have a picture of his headstone in New Jersey that someone added for me because I requested it. This person, their username is Historical Passion, whoever this is, they took this photo for me in New Jersey, which was pretty cool of them. So it can be a really good way to see things that you might not have been able to see otherwise. But like I said, Find a Grave started off as a memorial site. BillionGraves.com. Actually, before I go to BillionGraves, I want to show you one more thing. You can, when you register on this site, you can be one of their volunteers. So when you fill out your profile, there's a settings. Where's it at? There used to be, they've changed this a little bit. There used to be a settings page where you could choose to be a photo volunteer. These are requests I have that, photo requests I've submitted. These are ones that have never been filled. Sometimes it just means that there is no headstone, but you can see I've had people fulfill requests for me in Louisiana. There's some from New York. Most of these are in Louisiana. Here's one in Texas. There's one in Michigan I had fulfilled, Pennsylvania. So there's volunteers all over the country that help people. And I can't find the page right. Oh, maybe it's contribute. They used to have a very easy thing to find. Anyway, you could poke around and find it. Maybe it's under account. Ah, there it is. If you register to Find a Grave and you go to your account, you can sign up to be a photo volunteer. You can tell it if you want it to email you whenever there's new requests in your area. You can enter a zip code, or you can show on a map where you live, and then it'll send you emails if somebody requests a photo within a radius that you can choose. I used to have the email thing turned on, but I turned it off because I've taken photos of pretty much every cemetery that I can find within like a 20-mile radius of me. So there wasn't really any point anymore to getting the requests. It usually meant that the headstone wasn't there anymore, or it's a cemetery that's no longer accessible. So I just stopped getting those emails. But yeah, you can sign up to be a photo volunteer. And if you think that's something you would enjoy, it's a wonderful thing to do. So go for it. All right, moving on to BillionGraves.com. BillionGraves was started with, whereas Find a Grave was meant to be like a place for memorials and kind of a virtual cemetery, BillionGraves was designed specifically to be a database where you can search burial records or search cemeteries. The way BillionGraves works is they have a free app that you download to a phone or a tablet. And when you visit a cemetery, you open the app and you take pictures of you walk down every row of a cemetery and you take pictures of every headstone. So Find a Grave, you might go to a cemetery and you might be looking for like 1 or 2 photos that people requested. The point of BillionGraves is to go to a cemetery and take a picture of everything in that cemetery. So let me show you. Actually, let me just look and find us a cemetery in Hancock County. All right, so you can use your scroll wheel to zoom in and out. It shows you the cemeteries that are already entered, and the more you zoom in, the more will pop up. So I think green means that there are photo requests. Okay, green means that some photos have been taken at this cemetery. Blue means that nobody has gone to that cemetery yet. So you can see in Hancock County, there's a ton of cemeteries that no one has documented yet. So this would be a cool project. But this one looked kind of cool. This little one that I killed. Logtown, where was it? Yeah, this little cemetery looks cool. 28 images, looks like a small little rural cemetery. So you can go to the cemetery and you can view the graves in that cemetery. The cool thing is, because BillionGraves works with a smartphone app, whenever you take a picture, it locks in the GPS for that grave. And so someone who's trying to find it, if you're talking about a really big cemetery, they can use that GPS info to go exactly in the cemetery where it is and have a much easier time finding it. So BillionGraves is a free site, but they have subscription options that just give you more features. So let's just look for, I'm just going to look for John Smith in United States, Mississippi, and Hancock. Oh, there's a ton of them. So you can look for a last name or a full name, and you can find where people have added, well, these aren't all. They must be doing a radius search, because I see one here in Friendship Cemetery, and that's definitely not in Hancock County. But at any rate, it probably, they probably have a radius of a certain number of miles if they don't have a lot of results. So anyway, both Find a Grave and BillionGraves can be a good way to find people that you might not know about. Like I said, especially infants that died between censuses. Sometimes finding those little headstones are the only way you know that infant ever existed, unless you have, you know, Bible records or something. And both sites are great to volunteer for. I see a lot of photos on BillionGraves that were taken by Boy Scout troops. So if you know a local Boy Scout or Girl Scout organization, or maybe a youth group or something that's looking for a service project, tell them about BillionGraves. They could get together and document a whole big cemetery if they wanted to, and that would be awesome. Another way that you can volunteer for BillionGraves, if you don't want to visit the places in person and take pictures, is you can transcribe for them. And I have a bookmark up here because I do that. If you're ever bored and you're just sitting at your computer, you can transcribe headstones that other people took. So this is in Enterprise, Mississippi. And I'm going to zoom in, and this looks like A.K. Fitzgerald, born May 24th, 1885, died September 21, 1909. And that's just a picture of the same headstone. Oh, photographer DeeDee, I took this picture. And I'm going to click save. And now that's added to BillionGraves records. And when you add a headstone, it's also going to search Familysearch, because BillionGraves is run by the same people that do Familysearch. And so they're going to match Familysearch's family tree. This is another reason to take the time to add your people into Familysearch's family tree, because they might get matched to people on BillionGraves. And I'm going to say, yeah, those are the same person. So I'm going to click accept. And now those records are linked. So, you know, if you're ever bored, you can sign up for BillionGraves, and you can either take photos on your phone, or you can get on here and transcribe headstones, or do both. So that's BillionGraves. Next thing I want to show you, let me copy. I have this open in a document. I'm going to copy it. We're going to talk about the Bureau of Land Management, and I'm going to paste that link in the chat. Okay, so the Bureau of Land Management site is kind of cool. You can search land grants for where people bought land, and it's cool because it shows you the original documents. So I'm going to click search documents, and let's just see. I'm going to choose Mississippi, Hancock, and let me see if it'll let me just search without putting a name in. Ah, it will. So these are all the land patents they have for Hancock County. And you can search these by name, but I just wanted to see all the ones in the county. And I'm just going to click on one, Isaac Attaway. And you can view that original document. And it tells you, you know, what land they bought. So if you have people that, if you have ancestors that you know owned land in certain counties, you can look up and you might be able to find the original document of them buying that land. This is taking a while. It must be a big one. While we're waiting, you can also look at the details. It tells you the exact location of the property. It tells you the document number and all that good stuff. So this was in St. Stephen's Meridian. I don't know what that means. Township and range. This is all stuff I don't know what it means. There's the land patent. So this can be a cool way to find documents. And to my knowledge, these aren't available on any other genealogy site, not that I've found. So this is definitely one to bookmark if your ancestors bought land. Do a search on here and see if you can find the original document. Next up, let me copy this URL. Next up is the Mississippi Department of Archives and History Friedman's Bureau search. And I'm going to paste that link in the chat. If you don't save it, if you just Google MDAH Friedman's Bureau records, it's the first result. You can just click on it that way. So you scroll down and you use this link here that says click to continue. And you can search by a county, you can search by a person's first name, or you can search by the planter's name. So let's say you're trying to find Friedman, who lived in Hancock County. Age 0 probably means they just didn't get the age on this person. And it looks like all of these people worked for W.B. Richardson. And if you look at the date on these, they're pretty much all from 1865. In other words, these people are almost certainly working for their former quote, quote, owner, because that's so soon after the Civil War. So these are probably people who were previously enslaved by W.B. Richardson, and now they have freedmen's contracts on his land. And what this site gives you is they give you a contract number and a microfilm roll. And this gives you the information you need to contact the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. And this tells you where to locate that original document. And then you can either visit them in person or you can place an order for that document. So if you think that Orlando working on a Richardson plantation in Bay St. Louis is probably your ancestor, then you might want to contact MDAH and view that document. Unfortunately, the Friedman's names are pretty much all first names. This is kind of an exception. And the reason for that is because they almost all worked on this plantation and they probably have this same last name, unless they came from somewhere else for whatever reason. But for the most part, Orlando Richardson is probably this Friedman's name, unless he changed his name or, like I said, came from another plantation. All right, so that's the Friedman's Bureau records, and it's so hard to find information on African-American genealogy, especially before 1870. Remember that 1870 census? So this is one of the few places you can get any kind of an idea of where these people were living. Another thing is that if you know what plantation or planter they worked for, you might be able to look at the, go to the Hancock County Courthouse, and they might have records for this plantation, or they might have probate records for this family, and you might be able to track down records about your family, because often enslaved people were left to other family members in wills. Sometimes courthouse records have bills of sale. So if you know what plantation they worked on or what family they were enslaved by, it can be sort of a bridge to finding other records that can tell you more about them. All right, next, while we're on the subject of African-American genealogy, I want to show you ourbblackancestry.com. This site was created by a woman named Sharon Morgan, who actually lives in Noxubee County, Mississippi, and she's a really cool person. She spoke at MSU's genealogy fair one year, and she's really fun. But anyway, her site has tons of information. But the best thing about Our Black Ancestry is they have a Facebook group that is extremely active, and people go in there and they say, hey, I'm looking for this last name in this state or this county. And it's such a big group. Let me see if I can go to it now and show y'all. Can y'all see this pop-up window that just came up? Okay, let me copy the URL. It probably doesn't show because it's in another window. Y'all should be able to see it now. So this is their Facebook group. And if you're interested in African American genealogy, it is definitely worth joining this. You can see there's 35.7 thousand members. And I'll show you, examples of some of the posts. Sometimes it's just like general interest things like, here's a photo I restored. Sometimes it's questions about, I'm trying to find certain people. And this, so like I said, if you're interested in African American genealogy and you're on Facebook, this is definitely a group you want to join. And Our Black Ancestry is a very helpful site. And there's Sharon. Like I said, she's very cool and she's a lot of fun. So if you're ever looking for a speaker related to African American ancestry, she would be a good one to get. She's very fun speaker. Okay, next, running through these last few very quick, I just want to show you some of the newspaper sites. You might have already seen these. They are subscription sites, but they have free trials. Use those free trials. You can search by names. I recommend putting names in quote marks because it keeps them together. And you can also just browse and see what they have for a certain area. So if you click this little hamburger menu up in the top left corner, you can click browse, find by location and browse, and you can see what they have for Hancock County or whatever, wherever you had ancestors. And it shows you, uh-oh, they don't have Hancock County. Oh, these are cities, hello. Let's just say you're looking for Biloxi. All right, so these are the newspapers they have, and if you click on the paper, it shows you what years they have. Unfortunately for this one, it looks like they only have the one issue. Biloxi Herald, they have from 88 to 1901. Jackson, which is the state paper, usually had, tons of content from all of the counties in Mississippi, and they have Jackson from 1864 to 2020. The thing is, the more recent papers, you see these ones that are in yellow instead of blue. These require an extra membership. It's really stupid. They're going to get that money out of you any way they can. So a basic subscription gets you 1864 to 1922. And then if you want to view 1923 to the present, you have to pay a little bit extra. So that's what that means. But you can browse through the papers, what they have, or you can try searching. Newspaper sites are really fun. It's a way to find like kind of the fun stories in your family. I found that my great grandfather was convicted and was sent to the state penitentiary in Louisiana for stealing a cow. And then I found another ancestor in Pennsylvania who accidentally shot her husband. And I don't know if that accidentally is supposed to be in quotation marks or not, but so, sometimes you can, this is where you find the stories. And also obviously obituaries, obituaries are great gold mines of genealogical information, but also fun stuff. The stories behind the people, sometimes you just get kind of bogged down in dates and place names and it doesn't really mean anything to you. But sometimes if you have those kind of colorful stories, they make the people seem more real and more interesting. Got a question in chat. Have you done any research on Chronicling America? Yes, and I'm about to talk about it. Chronicling America, I'll go and do that. I was going to do another one first, but we can do that one next since you asked about it. Chronicling America is a free newspaper database done by the Library of Congress. There's the URL to it. You can also just Google Chronicling America and it'll be your first result. Chronicling America is free and they do have a whole bunch from Mississippi. So you can choose Mississippi and they search really old newspapers. They only go up to 1963 at the most recent, and it depends on the state, but some of them are even pushed back further than that. But if you're looking for old newspapers, Chronicling America is great. And you can do an advanced search. So if you click on that advanced search tab, you can go to Mississippi and then it'll show you, well, it used to, I guess it doesn't anymore. You can just tell it to search Mississippi. You can also, if you know the name of the paper, like if you scroll down and you find a Mississippi newspaper, like here's one, the Advertiser in Lexington, you can tell it to search just that paper. But like I said, you can tell it to search the whole state as well. You can say with any of the words, or you can tell it to search with the exact phrase. And that's like putting a name in quotes. The reason for the exact phrase thing, let me show you, like if you did a search for John Smith, it's going to show you results where John could be way over here and Smith could be way down here. And it's not necessarily someone with the name John Smith, because they're looking for both of those words anywhere on the page. If you put the exact phrase John Smith, it keeps those words together, and it'll only give you results if, see, with when you put it together, it's only on one newspaper page. We searched just the Lexington Advertiser, and you can scroll with your mouse and zoom in. There's also the controls at the top, the little plus or minus, and you can save these pages. You can download it as a PDF and save these. And there's the name John Smith. It's about Pocahontas. So anyway, that's Chronicling America, and Chronicling America is free. Another newspaper site is genealogybank.com. This is a subscription site, free trial. Just like with newspapers.com, do some searches, see if they have something. Newspaper sites can be kind of hit or miss. Sometimes you find, a newspaper site that has newspapers from a town where your family lived, and it goes back all these years, and you just hit a gold mine. And sometimes they don't have anything. So it's worth browsing their papers or doing some searches, seeing if they have something you can use. And then, so they do have, let me show you, I'll explain it. If you do a search, they show you previews. Let me do newspapers.com instead. I can't remember my genealogy bank login. Let's say I'm looking for John Smith. Okay. And let's say I want it to be just in Mississippi. So I'm going to click on Mississippi here. 56,000 results. All right. So let's just see. We can zoom in on this. Newspapers.com also lets you save to Ancestry, by the way, which is kind of cool. And sometimes Ancestry.com will give you hints from newspapers.com. You can't see them unless you have a subscription to newspapers, but that's what they are. But let's just say that I didn't have a subscription. You can still see this little preview area. So you wouldn't be able to click on it and see the full article like I can here, because I have a subscription to newspapers.com. But even if you don't have a subscription, you can see these previews, and Genealogy Bank works the same way. It shows you like the little preview, so you can get an idea of if that's the person you're looking for. So then you know that you're going to want to do that free trial. If you get enough things where you're like, oh, I really want to see that article, do their free trial, save as much as you can, and then cancel it. So newspapers.com, genealogybank.com, Chronicling America. There's also one called newspaperarchive.com. They don't have as many papers as the others do, but sometimes you can find something on there that you can't find on the others. So it might be worth doing a free trial just to see what you can find there. But generally, I haven't had much luck on that site. But newspapers.com is definitely worth subscribing to if you have people that live in coverage areas. And I do other types of research for my job where newspapers.com is really helpful. Let me see if there's anything else on my sheet that I wanted to cover. I believe that's it, because I want y'all to have time for questions. And I'm here for as long as y'all have questions, so you can go for it. I do have like a handout that I give to people who attend my workshops in person, and it lists a lot of these sites. I'm going to put my email address in the chat. If you would like a copy of this handout, just send me an email and I'll send you a copy of it. But other than that, do we have any questions?
And y'all can unmute yourselves if you wanted to ask instead of typing into chat.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, usually I get tons of genealogy questions.
Well, I'll ask one. Since you are from European countries, do you have a favorite site for doing finding records from European countries?
I haven't done a ton because my ancestors came to America kind of early, especially the ones that came from Louisiana, because they were Cajuns and they came down from Canada and everything. So a lot of their European records are more recent, but let me go back to Ancestry Library Edition. Ancestry.com, the regular version, they charge you extra to be able to search international records. But the cool thing about Ancestry Library Edition is that you can search those international records. So whenever I do search them, I do it on Ancestry Library. So you can double click the little search page here. And it starts off with that US map, but you can drag it over and zoom in here. And it shows you, like, if you want to look at Irish records. So they have 149 collections for Ireland. And then the more you zoom in, they're specific to, you know, different places. So it really depends on where your family's from. There was a genealogy site. I think it's myheritage.com. I did a free trial with them once, and they have a ton of records from Ireland that I found really useful. They had like some birth and death records that I had never seen before. I think it was this site. I'm not subscribed to it anymore, so I can't look at them fully, but myheritage.com is worth looking at for international records, especially Irish. Do that free trial thing and see what you can find on there. But yeah, international records, there's not a ton. I think it's because genealogy is kind of a real American interest. And so other countries are just like, yeah, whatever. But also because some of those older countries like England, they've been around for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years, and America is only, you know, a few hundred years old. So we have less stuff to digitize. Those other countries have tons of records, and they just don't have the resources to digitize all that. So there's not as many. But Ancestry Library has international records. MyHeritage has some. Familysearch has a few, but it's very spotty. So yeah, there's just not a lot of coverage for international records. You just have to kind of find a site that has the country you're looking for in particular. But Ancestry Library is really useful if you don't want to pay extra on Ancestry.
At one point, I had a subscription to Ancestry.com through the UK.
Oh, okay.
So that was, most of my ancestors were from the UK, so it made more sense than signing up for an American version. So
yeah, depending on when your ancestors came to America. Mine came so long ago that it doesn't make that much difference, but like if they were really recent, you can get a ton out of international records because they do have that more recent stuff online, and they can be really helpful. Any other questions? This is so unusual.
Well, if you guys do have questions, I encourage you to get in touch. I hope that we are going to have DeeDee back because I think this is a great topic. I did want to, if you have anything else to say, DeeDee, if not, I'll go ahead and close us out.
Oh no, just like I said, send me an email if you want that handout. And other than that, yeah, thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I will have a recording of this on our YouTube channel in the next day or two. So if you want to refer back to it, you will be able to. Also, once you close out, you may see a survey in your browser. Please feel free to give us feedback. And you can also get in touch with me. I will put my email in as well. and I will try to spell my name right. And again, thank you so much, DeeDee, for coming and talking to us. And thank you everyone for joining us. And that's it. Please check our calendar for future events.
Thanks
Thank
for inviting
you.
me, Ash. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.